Oh, dear Lord. You made many, many poor people. I realize, of course, it's no shame to be poor. But it's no great honor either. So what would have been so terrible if I had a small fortune?
Stella. My name is Stella Creasy and I'm the MP for Walthamstow, which is in North East London. And I work very closely with the Shark Stoppers campaign to end legal loan sharking in Britain, because I could see in my local community the damage that having 18 of these companies was doing to people's finances, that people were just finding there was so much month at the end of their money. They were taking out loans that were making their finances even worse and getting into debt they couldn't afford. So when I met other MPs like Stephen Lloyd, who told me that these companies were doing a good job for communities, I couldn't understand where he was coming from. And as time has gone on and we've seen now 5 million people borrowing in this way, and we've seen so many people getting into real levels of debt they cannot manage as a result, I knew the experience in Walthamstow wasn't just happening in North East London, it was happening around the country. And I knew Mr Lloyd's interpretation that somehow this wasn't a problem was just simply not right. I'm pleased now that with the work of trade unions and credit unions and community campaign groups across the country, we've managed to persuade the government to think again in opposing Labour's plans to cap the cost of credit. But I can see there's more to be done, and I just worry with an MP who doesn't see the damage that payday lending is doing in their community, what else might they have missed? So I hope people in Eastbourne will make sure that Mr Lloyd is a bit more tuned in to actually the damage that borrowing in this way does to people's finances, so that he can then help them see what could be done instead.
Good morning, Lucetta. My name's Stephen Lloyd. I'm the Member of Parliament for Eastbourne and Willingdon. What we're discussing today is the thorny issue of payday loan companies, which have been in the news a lot over the last few years. There have been some recent announcements by the government under Vince Cable, Secretary of State, to introduce a competition commission and a number of other bodies to look at payday loans, because there was a concern, a real concern, that some of the rates they'd been charging for people who weren't able to repay their payday loans were absolutely excessive. A few years ago, when I was in Parliament, there was a call to slap a cap on the interest rates that payday loans could charge. I was quite nervous about that, because one of my other hats, I'm the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on citizens advice bureaus, and they had advised me that though they could see merit in having a cap, there was concern that if it wasn't organised properly or even coordinated properly, that actually some businesses would pull out of that area. And their concern, and it's actually been mine since the very beginning, is that whether we like it or not, payday loans companies are here, and if you don't have them, there are nowhere near enough credit union organisations in the country. So the CAB's concern, shared by myself, was that some people are still going to need those bridging loans, and they would go to very ugly, bald, fat men with large baseball bats, which is something that has always been my priority to avoid. Now, payday loan companies have been with us for a long, long time. To be fair, I've been slightly weary of Labour's constant driving about payday loans, because they didn't actually do anything about it for the 13 years they were in power. But that's not uncommon with the Labour opposition. They're quite often complaining about things that they didn't do anything about when they were in power. But the latest position is the Financial Conduct Authority, some FCA, a body that we've given it even more teeth, is that they've set a number of specific rules with payday loan companies that I'm going to have to read to you because it's quite technical. The FCA are proposing a cap of 0.8% today, with no one paying back more than double of what they have borrowed. Now, what's happening now is that's out to consultation, but the government led, again, by a department called BIS, which is headed up by Secretary of State Vince Cable, who I work quite closely with in a number of different areas, are pushing very, very hard for for that consultation to be completed, to be reported, and for the FCA recommendations to be carried on. So where are we at with payday loans? In Eastbourne, as with every town around the country, there are a number of payday loan businesses. Eastbourne's actually come through the recession far better than pretty much any other seaside coastal town across the whole United Kingdom. Got unemployment down 40% since the general election to 3.3% claimant rate. So I'm really thrilled with the way the town's pulling together. But payday loans are there, and that means there's a need for them. The issue is you can't ban payday loans, and the reason being, it sounds a nice headline, but if you ban payday loan companies, where do people in that situation go for money? The truth of it, they go to not nice people, and it's a completely unregulated credit sharp business. Again, with my CAB, chair of the all-party parliamentary group, CAB hat on, I've worked very, very closely with them over the last few years, trying to educate people on the danger of loan sharks. Believe you me, in Eastbourne, as in any other town in the country, and some towns around the country, it's much, much worse. These are not nice people. So I do get a bit cross sometimes where the whole approach is let's just get rid of payday loans, because that takes away the fact that there are around 2 million people, give or take, who use them. Where do they go for those bridging loans? So we need to do something. We need to have something, and payday loans, I think, are an area that at least you've got established companies where if you are unhappy, you can do something about. Meanwhile, the FCA consultation, I will be pushing very, very hard, along with Vince Cable and others, for that to be completed as soon as possible, and for the introduction of their recommendations to happen. The payday loan industry screaming, well, I don't really care about them, I never did. What I was interested in is trying to find the most realistic way to allow people who unfortunately need to use payday loans to have access to a regulated industry. So I've got to make do with the payday loan companies until one day maybe I can have 3 credit unions in every town. But they're kicking off about the consultation, but that's just tough. They're going to have to accept the direction of travel, the way everything's going. To give Stella Creasy her due, who's been leading for Labour on this, she's battled very, very hard. I've disagreed with her on a couple of things, but I pay tribute to her in the battle that she's done with continuing to push this. What I would ask her is that she actually recognises that a lot of what the coalition has done, her government, when she wasn't an MP, but when they were in power for 13 years, did absolutely nothing. So the important thing to me is how do we solve this problem? I think we're getting much closer to doing that, while at the same time not stopping the flow of loans to people who need them. Because I repeat, and I know Eastbourne well, and I know pretty much every area of Eastbourne, and I've knocked on 20,000 doors from Hampden Park to Meads, and I do a lot of casework, and I know debt is an issue for people who are struggling. I would always do everything I can to stop good folk having to go to loan sharks, because it's not just that their rates are even worse than the worst of the payday loan rates, they deal in bad ways if you're not able to repay. So it's an issue that I think we're reaching broadly a consensus about how it can be sorted, and I'm pretty confident that these will all be in place before the general election. And then if, hypothetically, Labour win the election, I suspect that they would carry on with what we've now put in place. So I think in general, we're getting to a point where the industry is going to be regulated to the extent that it will be fairer for people who need to use payday loans, while at the same time not choking off the entire industry, so you have to go back to the men in baseball caps and rather nasty personalities. So I think we're nearly there.
If I were a rich man, all day long I biddy-biddy-bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard.
Yabba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dum. If I were a bitty rich, idle man, I'd build a big tall house with rooms by the dozen, right in the middle of the town. A fine tin roof with real wooden floors below. There would be one long staircase just going up, and one even longer coming down, and one more leading nowhere just for show. I'd fill my yard with the chicks and turkeys and geese and ducks for the town to see and hear, squawking just as noisily as they can. And each lump will land like a trumpet on the ear, as if to say, here lives a wealthy man. If I were a rich man, yabba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dum, all day long I biddy-biddy-bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. Yabba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dum. If I were a biddy-biddy rich, idle-diddle-diddle-diddle man, I see my wife, my Goldie, looking like a rich man's wife with a proper double chin, supervising meals to her heart's delight. I see her putting on airs and strutting like a peacock. Oh, what a happy mood she's in, screaming at the servants day and night. The most important man in town will come to fawn on me. They will ask me to advise them, like a Solomon the wise. If you please, Rebetavia, pardon me, Rebetavia, posing problems that would cross a rabbi's eyes. And it won't make one bit of difference if I answer right or wrong. When you're rich, they think you really know. If I were rich, I'd have the time that I like to sit in the synagogue and pray, and maybe have a seat by the eastern wall. And I discuss the holy books with the learned men 7 hours